Hey, Ninja. Hello! I am Benjamin T. Collier, also known in some circles as Poison Dart Frog.
Is its own reward.
You're not the one I'm talking to. Go away. So I'm doing something a bit different for this video. For those who don't know, I am on the autism spectrum. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome at the age of 8, and like up until the age of 5 I was non-verbal, so like pretty severely autistic. Have been what's referred to as high-functioning autistic since about the age of 8. So I'm doing this as a way of doing a sort of Q&A in a context that I'm already fairly familiar with, which is gaming. As video games are a bit like driving in that they're an excuse not to make eye contact,
Another dragon attack.
which sometimes makes it easier for people like myself to open up. Now, like technically I'm not making eye contact with you like in person, but even just making eye contact with the camera is sometimes a little bit intimidating. I've heard about people getting the red light syndrome when they know that a camera is on them and it is turned on. And I totally get that. It can be intimidating. It's like those red eyes that all the evil robots have, like Terminators and stuff, and that's the reason that they have the red eyes, is because they're recording you. And that's the really scary thing. It's not that they're killing you, it's that they're recording you while killing you. Like, that's the scary thing. It's like, I don't want people to see how terrified I am getting, like, hacked up by this killer robot. It's, like, embarrassing. So, in theory, playing something I'm familiar enough with, like Skyrim, which I've played quite a bit, may help me to just sort of get into the zone and not into my own headspace so much. Mine ore. This is always fun. I discovered a cave while mining this ore. That's a very small cave. So I've asked people to send me some questions that they'd like me to try to answer while doing this video. So I'm gonna give that a go. So if there's a question that you would like me to answer in a future video, then you can leave your questions in the comments below, and I will read through them and then possibly answer them in a future video. Or you can send questions to my business email, which is, got it written down here, bencollier@whiterosewriters.com. And just make it clear that it's a question you want me to answer in a video. Like, put that in the subject matter line, if that works best for you. So, I'm open to just about any question. Just keep in mind that I do want to keep these videos kid-friendly. So, let's keep the, like, questions and topics kid-friendly. So, with all that said, let's get to some questions. Alright, so a question from Karen Gregoire. Was there a certain age you can remember when you knew you were different from other people Or have you never or always felt different? And once you realized this, how did you feel about yourself? Okay. So, yeah, the time that I had confirmation, I guess would be the term, was when I was diagnosed, which was the age of 8. Before that, I think I felt a difference in a way, but like couldn't articulate what that was as a child. Just this sense of being... It was often in the context of feeling less than other children. I know that's a bad way to look at it, but that was the honest feeling. And from that time that I've spent getting to know others on the spectrum, I think that has been a common way of looking at it. And I don't know how much of that actually stems from the condition itself, and how much of that is from either the way that others deal with us, or the way that we process our place in the world and how we think others are dealing with us. Because I know inadequate is often the way that I felt. Just because of... Oh, hello. That guy literally just teleported straight in there. Unless he was actually there all along and is like a ninja giant. A nin giant. But yeah, I think any time that I perceived that there was something that most kids could do that I just couldn't for whatever reason, that my automatic way of processing that, whether it was in addition to other people's words or not, was just that there was something wrong, that I was inadequate. I don't think I knew what autism was before I heard about it in the context of myself being diagnosed with it. So when I found out about it, it wasn't like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But when it was explained to me what the condition was, that being able to put a name on it, and being able to identify, yes, here is actually the thing that is causing the difference. I think it gave closure. Again, like as a child, I wouldn't have been able to articulate a lot of this stuff at the time. But it made it easier to accept the fact that I was different. And I guess took away some of the like false guilt that I felt. And having an identification for the cause has also been helpful as far as making progress in different areas of life that I might otherwise had not been able to. Because when you know what the problem is, when you know what it is that you're dealing with, it becomes easier to figure out workarounds. Like, okay, I have sensitivity to certain sounds or feelings, like tactile feelings. And so I know to just arrange things so that I don't have to deal with those, and then I'm fine. For example, I am playing as a mage for this playthrough of Skyrim, which I do not normally do, and I am discovering that I die very easily because I am not using the kind of heavy armor that I'm used to. And so I have had to learn to conjure monsters to fight for me and take the hits for me so that I can keep my distance. And that has made this quite a bit easier. There's a question from Ryan Shanks. Is or are there certain behavior patterns that you're aware of as originating in autism? If so, what do you think about it? For example, do you think of it as part of your personality, identity? Do you think that's something you should work towards changing or something else entirely? Well, I guess a few things. Like, there's a lot that I know that still goes on, even though I hear from people these days that they don't detect the autism that much in me, which I take as a sign of progress as far as learning to interact with the world around me. But there are things like when I actually stop to analyze my behavior, there's a lot that I attribute to what I assume to be either part of the condition that's still there, or in some cases leftovers, just because the autism was there during my formative years, and so much of the way that I learned to interact with the world, like of the first time, was done while still somewhere between lower and higher functioning autism. And so there's definitely still some habits in place. Oh, that's a saber cat. I want to go. Come up here. There we go. Oh my god. Yay. Don't want that. Oh no, I'm carrying too much. Elena! Relina, I'm encumbered. Come help me. Relina! Where is you? There you are. As far as trying to think of specific examples, though, I know I still have a natural tendency to withdraw, which is fine to some degrees. Like, it is just part of some people's personality, it's not just those of us on the spectrum, that there is such a thing as too much people, and sometimes we just need a break from socializing, even people that we like. But what I mean in this case is, like, I know that I'm not... I don't have a good track record as far as maintaining friendships over a long period of time. And in some cases that is just from socially withdrawing. Sometimes it's just from, you know, letting things slide, letting things get cold. And then there's times where it's because I just don't feel like a part of a group anymore. Because I've spent some time analyzing myself over the past little while. And a pattern that has arisen in my life is it seems to be easier than people realize for me to feel unwanted. And that takes a number of forms. Sometimes it's specific events. Sometimes it's just a lingering, like, ongoing feeling of not being wanted, not necessarily anything that's done or said, but just a long period of time where nothing is done or said to make me feel wanted. And the times in my life that I can think of when I have withdrawn from specific people or groups of people was from that. And I don't know how much of that comes from autism as an origin, and how much is just me. But it is something for myself to be mindful of. As far as doing anything to change it, I'm trying to get into a more persistent habit of actually opening up about it when I notice that those feelings are starting to surface. Because like, I don't think it's ever anything that someone does deliberately
Over here.
to make me feel unwanted. Just they're unaware of how words or actions make me feel. And rather than just being quiet about it, like actually confronting people, like letting them know, hey, like when you do or say this, here's how it makes me feel. As another thing that I've learned in life, and this is conditionally especially true of some of us autistics, but it is true in some degree of everyone, that the biggest and most common mistake a person can make is to assume that people know things. And I, in particular, am to try and get myself out of the habit of assuming that I don't have to speak up about something because people already know how I think and feel about stuff. Now, why is this particularly a problem for those of us on the spectrum? It might not necessarily be all of us. I might be lumping us together a bit too much. I'm just speaking from my own experience, from what I've seen of others on the spectrum. Are you hostile? Show us ooh, that came straight for me. So I don't know if I want to... Sure. Necromancer Adept. More like Dead Adept. Am I right? Am I right? I don't think he's listening. And I'm gonna try to do my best job of articulating this. During my formative years, so the years that I was learning what everything is, I was still severely autistic at the time. And spent most of my time in my own world. Usually not even aware that other people existed. And if I ever did become aware of other people, they were in the context of environment. Like just a part of this outside place that I didn't really want to be in, but that I was forced into like being a part of sometimes. And yeah, I, as far as I was aware, was the only like person, the only entity in existence. There was just me. And what that, like, part of what that meant, and again, I would not have articulated this way at the time because I was a kid, but looking back on my memories now, part of what this meant, the fact that I was the only entity in existence as far as I could tell, was that there was also no other mind in existence other than my own. And why I mention that is because with that perspective came this expectation. Even when I started becoming aware of these other things that were people, because like at the time I would not have known that I was one of them. Because I looked at them as environmental and not their own entities. Individual beings. There was an assumption that whatever I was thinking was what everything else knew. In other words, when I needed something, the assumption was everything that had the power to get me this thing that I needed would already know what the problem was, would already know what I needed, and I didn't have to communicate to them the fact that I needed something, because they already know. Because there's only my mind that exists, so, like, you already know that I need this thing. Why are you requiring me to point it out to you? It's like, you already know. I already know. Therefore, you already know. I expected everyone to be a mind reader, in other words. And it didn't work both ways. I didn't... Like, it wasn't weird to me that I could not read anybody else's mind, because there was nobody else yet. Everybody was just things. Nobody had their own mind, as far as I was aware. I don't remember when I first became aware that there was such a thing as individuality and me being the same kind of person thing as all of these other people things. But that was probably quite a shock to me. And including the fact that everyone has their own separate set of thoughts. What is going on? was a very confusing few seconds. So I didn't think that guy was hostile towards me. But then he started shooting at me.
There's been word of
And I
some
got
trouble
bit.
nearby. I'm on my way to investigate.
Oh, good for you. So yeah, the idea that other people have thoughts that are different from the thoughts that I have, and that everyone's thoughts are secret to them, and that thoughts are not automatically shared between the collective. Your thoughts are private, and you actually do have to find words to communicate what it is that you're thinking to other people in order for them to take those thoughts like into themselves and then have that information. That was a bit of a process for me to learn. And again, that was during my formative years. So even knowing as much as I do now about the way that reality actually works, what you learn during your formative years tends to stay with you.
Oh, hey there.
Even just
You
like
gonna
on the
join
back of your
Dawn Guard
mind.
too? Truth is, I hope you don't
Like this
mind.
guy wants to talk, I'm just gonna try and ignore him. And so, although it is a more universal problem that people in general seem to have, I myself am particularly susceptible to the assumption that people know things just because I know things. And that is not the case. I've had to remind myself of that quite often. A question from Kirsty Shanks. What are you most proud of when it comes to the content you've created on your YouTube channel? That's a good question. I mean, I'm proud of different things for different reasons. But to pick one right now, off the top of my head, the PG version of the Best of compilation has just come out at the time of this recording for the Skyrim But I'm a Wuss series. And that does have a special place in my heart. Partially because of where it falls in the timeline of me getting into YouTube. Like, it was my first foray into doing a series. Because I was mostly just doing Skyrim fights up to that point. Which is still the thing that gets the most attention overall. But as far as a series of videos that are sort of putting a video together, like putting a story together, Skyrim was my first attempt at that. And it was the next logical step for me from what I had been doing up to that point, which is just taking recordings off of the PS4 and transferring them to the computer and just uploading them as is. Skyrim was my first attempt at like figuring out how to edit, clip, slap together different videos, like a separate recordings, putting them into a single video, for the purpose of doing something that told a bit of a story. And figuring out that I could do that was very encouraging. It helped me to keep going with that. I also surprised myself quite a bit with what I found out I could do, because I didn't realize until I started doing that playthrough how much I can express emotion through just the way that I move the camera. Because like certain things about the playthrough I could predict and sort of plan for ahead of time, but the moments that actually made me laugh the most were the unexpected things, and then trying to respond to them in character, which I mostly managed to do, to my surprise. Because there are clips, like for example, I remember that clip near Winterhold, where everything everywhere was snow. Like the ground was covered in snow, the sky was full of snow-filled clouds, the air was full of snowflakes, and this random guy walks up to me like, "Oh, good to see another merry soul enjoying this fine day." And you can see my character going, I don't know if you can tell in the video, I was laughing hysterically. That's a random encounter, I didn't know that was going to happen. And when it did, it was hilarious. And somehow I managed to stay in character. Alright, question from Mary Elizabeth on Facebook. What in particular about a book, movie, show, or other media hooks your interest? In other words, what makes you actually want to ingest it or come back to it again? And why do you think that's the case for you? This is a very interesting question. At least at this time in my life, because sometime over the past few years I ran into something. I don't know if it's just getting old and grumpy, or I think in this particular case it's more that it may be one of the unfortunate side effects of studying the art of storytelling as much as I have. But at some point I developed a general distaste for anything scripted. Like, not to the extent of, like, hating everything, but it just became very difficult for anything to hold my attention, as long as it was scripted. Because I had gotten too familiar with all of the tropes. I used to think that my issue was just with modern storytelling, and I do have some issues with modern storytelling, but even going back to older materials, I think I'm just seeing too many of the tropes. I need storytelling where I don't know where this story is going, but I'm still enjoying the ride, and very few writers can do that for me. Quentin Tarantino does that for me, but as far as like a repeating entertainment, like a series, and it's part of the reason that I got into YouTube. When I discovered that there was such a thing as watching real people just playing through video games, I fell in love with that idea. And I think my first exposure to it was Team 4-Star, who are known for making Dragon Ball Z Abridged. I was Googling probably something about Xenoverse at the time, and I just came across, hey, Team 4-Star played Dragon Ball Xenoverse. And I was like, yes, please, I don't want to see that. Like, what is this? What's happening? What have I discovered here? Because I didn't know they were gamers. I mean, I didn't know they had a gaming channel. And since discovering them, one of my favorite forms of entertainment for the past few years has been Team 4-Star plays Fallout 4. And the first time going through it, I enjoyed it so much because I didn't know where the story was going. Like, I've been through the game, but I've done my version of the game. I haven't seen what they would do. And I enjoyed it so much, and even on repeat viewings. Because it's a long enough series that I can watch it, like I can watch it a few times and a lot of it will still feel new to me. Even though the games have formulas that they tend to follow as far as the stories, I don't know what's going to happen. The players rarely know what's going to happen. In games like Skyrim in particular, random encounters are a thing. So even if you think you have a plan, that may not be what happens. And watching the players respond to the situations, hearing their thought process. I even enjoy listening to them build their characters as they play, because I also enjoy listening to the creative process. As a writer, I like hearing other people's reasons behind the decisions that they make for the characters and their own world building. Alright, question from my dad, actually. What gives you the greatest satisfaction on a typical day? Making people laugh. Actually, I think as a child, laughter was kind of the first universal language that I learned. At the time, particularly in the form of slapstick, which would, like, resulted in a lot of physical comedy that sometimes scared people because they thought I was actually getting injured when I was just, like, being dramatic. It's always been a very satisfying thing to me knowing that I've made people laugh. I think it also feeds into encouraging me over the fact that I'm learning to communicate in ways that will actually have an emotional response out of people, whether it's laughter or something else. Like, actually, one of the most encouraging compliments that I've gotten from my writing at times has been people telling me that I made them cry. As long as it was a part of the book that was actually intended to make someone cry. So when I hear about that, and it was a part of the story that actually was intended to tug on the heartstrings, that is a particular encouragement to me because it lets me know that I understand this thing called emotion, which has always been a challenge for me. And a lot of the way that I write is based on assumptions over how people will feel about certain things. Whether my objective is to make the reader sad or angry or happy about something. I'm usually keeping that in mind and trying to write the story in such a way as to deliver that emotional impact at the right moments with each thing. That's a big part of me trying to give the reader an adventure to go on. Is trying to offer them these like emotional roller coasters, so to speak. Another question. Do you enjoy being alone? When did you notice you wanted to be around others? Is it difficult to be around others? So, yes. Like, I've noticed that I definitely need alone time. And I may be one of those individuals who needs alone time more than he needs social time. But there is a definite change that occurred at a certain point in my life, and I think it was early 20s, I want to say, when I made the switch from always preferring to be alone to realizing, oh no, I actually do like need interactions with other people for whatever reason. As far as my age, early 20s, not early 1920s. I was not around yet. And even now, I don't quite have the intellectual understanding to say why it is that I need other people. I just understand that I do. It was a discovery, it was a surprising discovery, sometime in my 20s when I was like, I like being alone, but somehow my day doesn't feel complete unless I've spent time with other people. Alright, last question tonight from Michelle and Delisle. My niece was diagnosed with autism. I would love to know where to look for answers, to learn more about it, to learn on how I may support her best. Make sure she is feeling loved and not out of place. Is there any books or websites that are reliable? So, as far as websites, there are quite a few out there, but as far as looking for something that's being experienced and trusted, the website that comes to my mind to recommend is Autism Durham, which is admittedly a localized answer. As far as websites outside of Canada, if you need something more local to you and Durham isn't your area, that's something I still have to look into. As far as like just a website to go to get some information on autism, to learn more about it and learn some stuff about, like you said, how to help someone on the spectrum to understand the love that you have for them, to like understand how to communicate. The love that you have for them, and to show them support. And showing them support in a way that resonates with them. Autism Durham would be the website that I would recommend for that, as far as general information. And my own website, benjaminfrog.com is the name of my blog. Autism isn't the only thing I talk about, but it has been discussed quite a few times. If you look at the categories, there is one specifically for autism. So you'll be able to find blog posts on that topic by looking up that category. So that's going to be it as far as the... What the heck was that? Oh, one of these. Okay. And that's going to be it for this video. I may do another one of these in the future. I don't have a solid plan written out yet. I'm just testing the waters right now. So, thank you for watching my first go at this. Thank you for everyone who submitted questions. I know I didn't get to all of the questions today, but as I said, I may be doing another one of these in the future. And remember, if you have any questions that you would like to hear me answer on one of these videos, then leave a comment below, or fire me an email at bencollier@whiterosewriters.com. And I may answer your question in an upcoming video. So until next time, stay safe out there. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you later.